Hi guys, welcome back to Trekyards. I'm Captain Foley,
I like Gone Kings.
and today we're going to talk about the Defiant. The Defiant showed up a Defiant class showed up in Lower Decks this last episode, Crisis Point Part 2, Paradoxes.
It's the only part of the episode that was actually live action, real, non-holodeck. This thing pops in at the end to a big giant reveal. This is a spoiler, guys, but there's more spoilers to come for sure. But it does appear, and it warps away. It does decloak. It's Defiant-ish. We're looking at comparisons, but what do you think, straight out the gate, to your gut reaction of seeing this?
I loved it right away, but I immediately saw a problem. It is a Section 31 ship, which might explain this problem away.
It had
But
better.
as we know, the Defiant got destroyed, was replaced by the Sao Paulo, which got a dispensation to be renamed Defiant, but no cloaking device on the new Defiant. Because that was like a special thing that was did in conjunction with the Romulans. There's supposed to be a Romulan officer on board to monitor the cloaking device. That didn't go anywhere, unfortunately.
And you can be forgiven to not realise that the second version had no cloak, because it's only in like a season and a half, and they are always pew-pewing rather than rolling. So I never realised until like a year ago, and you point out, I'm like, oh yeah! Huh.
Yeah, it wouldn't have it necessarily.
Yeah. So. And we've never seen another Defiant have it. So while this obviously isn't the Defiant, because they didn't just steal the Defiant, it's now the second ever Defiant class to have a cloak, which I wouldn't even consider. But yeah, really great point.
I mean, it looks good, but I can sense something's wrong with it. It seems a little more pointy than the Defiant actually is, if I recall correctly. But we're going to take a look and compare and discuss those things. I think it's just fair to say it's a Section 31.
Yes.
Might not supposed to have a cloak, but it's Section 31, so they don't care. So.
Oh god, yeah. They've got 3 cloaks just for the sake of it. They got Romulan, a Klingon, and a Solar just because. Yeah, I saw it, and it's obviously nice, but we have seen some extremely good replicas recently. The Delta Flyer was Gold Star. The E in this episode is phenomenal. This one feels like a step down. Say, it's a 631 variant, therefore you can break the pattern. It's lit much darker. The texturing feels much darker. It feels lacking detail as well, but it just feels more like, to me, like a grubby Defiant. But if you're not going to go full black on a starship because it's silly, this, I guess, is... I can see them being a thematic close. Like, let's just make it darker, you know?
Well, I mean, in Discovery, the Section 31 ships are black, so...
We don't talk about Bruno or Discovery.
I know we don't, but I thought I'd mention it. It's darker than other
yes.
relationships.
Yes, but it does look nice, but it looks weird. The reverse shot, though, lens flare central as it warps out. This one instantly, I'm like, where have the second impulse drives come from in the warp? You know, like those entire things are warp grills, and now an impulse engine as well. It's like, huh.
Well, yeah,
okay.
That's another thing I noticed too. And again, it could be made that they learned some lessons from the Dominion War. And those extra impulse engines add some extra thrust, which might increase maneuverability a bit.
Well, at least speed, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, that's obviously why they're there. But it's just like, well, that's different. But obviously the fans are wondering. Let's compare them, Stuart. So the next frame is, of course, the original Defiant from Deep Space Nine, the final hero model, which, as you can see, I've lit relatively same. And I've brightened up the one from the show because it was damn dark. It's blue now. Which I didn't really recognise until I did these renders. I'm like, oh yeah, it was meant to be red. Oh yeah.
I didn't notice that either. So there you go. I mean, front Bizarre Collector, makes sense. So, but also, yeah, there's way more differences than I initially thought. Like those pylons are quite obvious because they're pointed.
Hugely
pylons,
different,
but
yeah.
Like engine modules. But like a raised center part now, the shape of the head of the ship is different. Wow, and yeah, the Greeblies aren't as greebly. They're more covered up, which, again, could just be more advanced. They've covered up some areas that might be problematic, armored them up. I don't know.
I mean, this is when the lens of animation's a tricky one to go through, because clearly, if you compare them, the middle circle section is less tall in the new version, clearly. But that might be translation to animation. And the front bit, like I say, is more bulbous. But that should just be a translation. But then again, the Delta Flyer did perfect. Sovereign looked almost perfect. So at this point, you can't. I don't want to judge them. Like, they've almost earned too much cred that these feel like, well, these are deliberate choices to make it weird. I do think, however, it's significantly worse looking than the Defiant. Because that, for me, is a lightning in a bottle kind of ship. I think the tweaks they've done significantly reduces the good-lookingness of it. What would you say to that? Like the reproportion, the reframing.
Yeah. At first I would have disagreed with you, but the more you talk, the more I kind of agree with you now.
It's not bad, but it defines a high bar to start from.
I just wish that because it's a Section 31 ship, to make it more clear for people that the Delta and the pennant weren't there. Or if it
the
was
one
there,
time we'll argue that, Stuart. The one time.
Yeah. Just have a black Delta. That'd be hilarious, because they make fun of that in the show. And no ship name, so...
That's true. I didn't notice that. Yeah, the pennant's a funny one, because I love a pennant, and you need a pennant, but this is the one time you don't want a pennant, and yes, you could argue they've requisitioned an existent ship, but then it should have a registry. But I can imagine they haven't included it just because they don't want to name it, because they don't want to lock themselves in, which is fair enough. But no, those warp coil areas are obviously the big difference. They've just stretched them right out. It does change the pointy vibe drastically, obviously. It adds more depth. Obviously, they want the impulse engines. The pulse phases look about the same, although now glowing. It's really interesting. It is just a redistribution. Like, you can see where everything's meant to be. They've just gone...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not that I don't like it. I do like it as a newer take on the Defiant class. Like, it just... Lessons learned during the Dominion War, I think is safe to say.
Well, and having more impulse power, that's a fair need. Let's overpower this overpowered ship even more. I'm certainly missing the blue glows from the side blue pod things, and sometimes in some versions those back purple pod elements. I know you would barely see them, but the Defiant for me really pops when you have all of the color pieces pop. For me, that's the charm of it. I always add those back in, even if they're not in every version. And you can forgive their lack of greeblies either side of the pennant because it's just unnecessary detail, I suppose. Yeah. But it does give the whole ship a much more flat and plain feeling. Versus it's not tremendously more 3D feeling than the real version, but it all those little things add up in your brain. It's interesting.
It is interesting, but let's look at the back for a minute, because it's definitely a different feel, 100%. Things are stretched out a bit, especially in that back module. It's almost like they wanted more internal volume, but yet they look smaller. I mean, it could be camera angle or focal length or whatever you...
I tried to match-ish, but it's very hard to do. Yeah, I think they have probably stretched out the back. And a lot of fan models, they do misalign the back piece just because you don't know exactly. It does feel longer. I mean, you can kind of see the greeblies. There is more space. So, yeah, if they've stretched it a bit and whatever. And I think they've also flattened it as well.
Mm-hmm. But those engine pods are totally different.
You ain't got no registry on the sides anymore. They're in space. Which, I mean, if you're looking at, we don't want to have a name for the ship, then doing that as a byproduct removes that as a feature. And also no windows on the underside as well. Which no one ever knows they're there, because you rarely see it from the bottom, but they are there. And in my hero model, we have got interiors in every single damn window, and they're all cargo bays pretty much, because I wanted stuff in them. As in my version. But the back details are almost identical. Like they've obviously are building a Defiant, but there's reason behind the difference that it's intentional. They know what they're doing. They have plans, and here we are. I think it's fair to say a Section 31 stealth assault variant of the Defiant. Version 2, lessons learned. I would have liked, I think, honestly, if you go back to the first or the last picture, if you're going to go full-on differences, I'd have liked to maybe see dual pulse phaser cannons or something of the ilk to beef up, or visible torpedo launchers, because we know where the quantums come from the little slit, but it's always been a stupid place because there isn't space to launch a torpedo there. There really isn't. It's weird. So I would have liked if they'd modified to visibly see more weapons, subtly, but that I think would have been a nice improvement. Maybe just make that, extend that hole between where the quantums are, and maybe I'd slightly raised launchers, very subtle raised launchers, but they got dual quantum launchers now rather than single. It's small, but I would have liked a bit more visible weapons if I was gonna do it.
Yeah. Even just put a black delta on one of the engine pods or both. That would be kind of neat too. Just a nice little subtle... See, I think they want to trick people. I think they want people to say, oh, this is the Defiant, and have that go over social media, the Defiance in this episode or whatever. And meantime, their whole time, they're like, no, it's not. No one will notice.
Trekyards won't look at this. Yes, we look. We're careful.
Well, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Put your Section 31 brain on and just let us know what's going on with this thing. Do you agree that it's a Section 31 variant, just like a newer version of the Defiant class? And tell us about what you think about the cloaking device, because a lot of people might not know that this second Defiant did not have one. So
this is the second canon Defiant to have a cloak.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes.
Very cool.
So comment down below what you thought, and we want to read them. Obviously, we want you to be part of the community. So subscribe, click the notification bell icon, and join us for lives where we have discussions like this with you guys in real time, because we love hanging out with you guys.
And if you want to support what we do here every week and sometimes every single day, there are really important ways to do that. Join our lives and super chat. Any of your thoughts, any amount of times goes towards running the show. Really, really helps. Or one time at PayPal at Trekyards. On PayPal, trekyards@hotmail.com. That really helps with show costs, and monthlies, which, $5 a month mounts up if you support for more months. Then Patreon is a monthly, and of course, join the channel on YouTube as well. All great ways, all appreciated, and thank you in advance.
That's right. So until next time, we are Trekyards. You are you. I'm Captain Foley.
And I'm Connor Holmes.
Yes, and we'll see you guys later.
Bye guys.